Hi, I'm Michael Siddle.
And I'm Nick Nanos.
And welcome to Trendline. Before we get underway, Nick, I just want to share our thoughts to the people of BC, our friends and family, as that province undergoes historic flooding. For the latest on that, you can go to ctvnews.ca. Also, congratulations to the Canadian men's soccer team. Now we are at the top of the CONCACAF group. Pretty amazing. Some, reason to celebrate.
Hey, listen, we got to take -10. They're playing soccer in Edmonton. So kudos to Edmonton and the Edmonton fans that were cheering Canada on. But what an exciting game last night. Top of CONCACAF and hopeful. Why don't we say hopeful now in terms of World Cup qualifying chances?
Now, in this episode, some major news out of Parliament this week. So, Conservative leader Erin O'Toole has kicked Senator Denise Batters out of caucus. So, we will be doing a check-in with the opposition ahead of Parliament resuming next week. We're also going to look at the most politically dominant premier in Canada. I will let our listeners guess who that is. And finally, Nick, you've got a lot of great numbers on U.S.-Canada relations for this week's Three Amigos Summit. So first, major news out of Ottawa. Conservative leader Erin O'Toole kicks Harper appointee Senator Denise Batters out of caucus. Is this division? What's driving it, Nick?
Well, there's a fight for the heart and soul of the Conservative Party right now, and you know what? It's kind of like it's retro hour, right? In the old days, we talked about the former Progressive Conservatives and the former Canadian Alliance Reform Party. Those two parties coming together, and those old battle lines are being drawn right now. And as a result, I think what we're seeing is a lot of tension and division within the party. And this was brewing, Michael, even before Election Day. I think it happened when Erin O'Toole had that when he had that endorsement from former Prime Minister Brian Mulroney, who is one of the most successful Conservative prime ministers in the modern era. The other successful Conservative prime minister in the modern era is Stephen Harper. So, can you imagine Stephen Harper watching the news and seeing Erin O'Toole and Brian Mulroney?
Yeah.
Would you want to have been a fly on the wall?
Oh my gosh!
Who knows what Stephen Harper might have been saying in perhaps a firm or loud voice while he was watching that. But the fact of the matter is that Stephen Harper still has a lot of clout and strength within the party, as does former Prime Minister Brian Mulroney. And I think what some Conservatives who thought that they were voting for a socially conservative leader under Erin O'Toole got someone during the election that was much more progressive, and I don't think they're going to forgive that, and it doesn't sound like they are, which speaks to, I'm not even going to call it a rearguard action. It's actually a full-on assault on the leadership of Erin O'Toole, where there are people within the party that want to bring it to a leadership vote and to get that vote as soon as possible in order to bring some sort of settlement to what Erin O'Toole is doing. So stay tuned. This is going to be like one of those, what do we call it? Political soap opera. It's going to go, and then someone else will say something. And right now, the latest thing is the person being booted out right now by Erin O'Toole.
And we saw Conservative MP Michelle Rempel-Garner tweeting about this, just, basically pleading for an end to this, saying essentially that Liberals are popping champagne corks over this division. I thought unifying the Reform Party and the Progressive Conservative Party back in the day with Stephen Harper and Peter MacKay was supposed to unify the party and end this division, but it's just sort of bubbling up again.
Yeah, and Rempel-Garner is 100% right. If the narrative continues that the Conservatives are divided, they don't have any chance of forming, for example, a majority government, because or even a government, I would hazard to say, because if a party does not support its leader, or a party is divided, it basically is a big signal to average voters that that party is not ready to govern. So if the Conservatives want any chance of getting rid of the Liberals, they have to unify and have one message. And I guess maybe some of those conservative insiders have to decide who their enemy is. Is it some of their colleagues that might be a little more progressive or perhaps a little too right wing, depending on where you stand on the spectrum? Or is it the Liberals in trying to get back into power? And right now, it looks like the Conservatives have their sights firmly set on each other. As they remember SCTV blowed up real good. That's what
blowed up real
good. That's what we're talking about right now for the Conservatives. They're going to blow up real good. But they've got to pull themselves together, because the ironic twist in all of this is that there's not a lot of enthusiasm for the Liberals or Justin Trudeau, and that people are looking for an alternative to them.
Now on that point, Nick, I mean, you've got the numbers to back that up, that there's a lot of dissatisfaction with the major parties. Do you think O'Toole's strategy to sort of push the party closer to the center right, let's say, it is a potentially successful strategy?
Well, properly implemented, it can be a successful strategy. The fact of the matter is that most Canadians are in the center. I mean, what do we have in the parties? We have the Conservatives trying to manage, for example, and respond to the People's Party, which picked up support in the last election and they're still at around 5% nationally. And then we have the Liberals, being very progressive. This is an exceptionally progressive Liberal government, because they're worried about the New Democrats. What does that mean? That means the center has been abandoned. What does this mean? That most Canadians have been abandoned. And I think for many Canadians, when they see a very progressive Liberal government, a Liberal party, we should say, and a Conservative party that's focused on the right wing, basically the center has been vacated. And I think for any of the two major parties that have realistically a chance to form a government, moving towards the center, not at the center, but moving towards the center, is probably the best strategy to form a majority government.
And the Conservatives aren't alone in dealing with this internal strife. Another news story we've seen recently is that Annamie Paul is now officially out of the Green Party. It took weeks for that to happen. There was some sort of legal arrangement in the background there. What is going on with a lot of these opposition parties?
I think we should add for Annamie Paul that I believe that she also said that will no longer be a member of the Green Party of Canada. So it's kind of like in your face, right? Let me not just step down, but let me take my little green card, if there is such a green party card, rip it up. And the thing is
recycled paper probably on that.
Yeah. So think of it this way. So if you're in the Conservatives, it's like right wing, how progressive or socially conservative are you? For the Liberals, it's like, are you a blue liberal, which is a little more fiscally conservative, or are you a very progressive liberal? And for the Green Party, part of the subtext, my understanding is that part of the subtext is that there are individuals within the Green Party that would be very happy to see the Greens to be left of the New Democrats as more of a left-wing social democrat alternative to the New Democrats. And then there are other Green Party members that probably want to see the party more like in the mold of the Green Party in Germany, which will be part of the potential German coalition government, which is a little more centrist, actually includes some conservatives, focused on the green recovery and a green economy, still committed to the environment, but a little more centrist, so to speak. And I think Annamie Paul, in addition to the subtext of all the stuff that happened in terms of the internal politics of the Green Party and some of the personalities, I think this other subtext of Green Party, what is it? Is it, a left-wing New Democratic Party? Or is it a little more of a moderate environmental party? And I think for Annamie Paul, it looked like, from what I heard, that she was more on the German side of the equation in terms of a moderate environmental party, the Greens, while others were not happy with that. And they basically took the legs out from under her day one of the campaign. And here's another party that, like, let's face it, we were talking about floods in British Columbia, followed by fires in British Columbia. If there's a time for the Green Party to really shine, this is the time. So it's a significantly, massively missed opportunity for the Green Party. And they're bickering too, just like the Conservatives.
I don't want to leave out two other parties that where the waters are calm. I suppose there isn't a try and attempt to drift to the center. The NDP and also I'll include the People's Party. Things are calm there.
Yeah, plus, and I'd also include the Bloc Québécois in that.
Mm-hmm.
For Jagmeet Singh and the New Democrats. No real rumblings, at least publicly, about his leadership. But how many times can the guy run and not win or not move the dial? I think that's eventually going to catch up with him. Blanchette managed to hold on to what he has, so there's not going to be any grumblings for his leadership. And Maxime Bernier's got his own personal party called the People's Party of Canada. And his numbers are still, and the numbers for the party are still at around 5 or 6%. So good on them on that front.
Nick, let's do a provincial check-in. For this episode, we're going to look at Quebec, where CAQ Premier Francois Legault, is it safe to say he's the most politically dominant premier in the entire country?
I think so. He's definitely not in trouble. Has very high numbers, and when we look at tracking from my friend Jean-Marc Léger, who has a great grip on the pulse of provincial politics on Quebec. When we look at those Léger tracking numbers, you can see the CAQ party at 47%, almost one out of every two Quebecers in the October numbers from Léger suggest that they would vote CAQ. And the Liberals, the once mighty provincial Liberals, back 27 points. They're at 20.
Wow.
The Parti Québécois, the once powerful Parti Québécois, 11%. That's one out of every 10. And Quebec Solidaire at around 11%. So what we have is a whopping advantage. And some experts suggest that if there were an election held, that Legault could sweep the whole province, that he could win every single seat. And remember when that happened? Time machine. Frank McKenna, 1987.
Wow.
And was one of the big sweeps in Canadian political history. But yeah, Legault standing tall, very connected with the voters. They seem to be very happy with him at this particular point in time. So yeah, pretty strong numbers for Legault and the CAQ.
I'm curious. So it's happened in New Brunswick before, as you've said, but incredibly rare. Maybe that's the only time. I need to fact check that. But what is driving this in Quebec? Why is the support for the opposition there so low?
Well, first of all, the provincial Liberal brand took a hit and has taken a hit over the last number of years with controversies related to some behavior. Political behavior. The Parti Québécois, I think for many Quebecers are they're fatigued at least with separation, not nationalism and not sovereignty, but with separatism. And there's no wind in the sails for the Parti Québécois. And then you have to give Legault credit. He's been a steady leader. He's done well throughout the pandemic. And, some other premiers have had a little turbulence. He hasn't really had very much turbulence. He's been very solid throughout the pandemic. And he's been focused on jobs in the economy and a better future, while at the same time, a very strong advocate for the province of Quebec, for the French language. And I think he's struck the right balance to really be a dominant force in Quebec provincial politics.
Nick, let's take a quick break, but afterwards, we're going to discuss the latest on US-Canada relations. Nick, we're back. So US-Canada relations may be a little bit frosty in terms of trade, but in terms of what Canadians and Americans can agree on, you have some really great new data for us.
Well, I think Canadians, Americans, and Mexicans can all agree that we're at the top of the CONCACAF table. Those three countries are dominating CONCACAF. So the three amigos, they might be thumb wrestling over who the better team is.
Yeah, and Mexico probably not so happy about that, but
at least today Justin Trudeau wins the thumb wrestling on the soccer front. But there's some interesting. We do a long-term tracking study of 1,000 Canadians and 1,000 Americans on the big issues. And, obviously the pandemic is a big issue. And, when we ask Canadians and Americans, for example, who the biggest health threat might be in this pandemic era, both Canadians and Americans agree that it is China. About 73% of Americans cite China as the biggest health threat. Only about 5% think that Canada is a health threat. That's 1 out of every 20. And among Canadians, about 2 out of every 3, or 65% of Canadians think that China is the major health threat. But 3 out of 10 Canadians think that the US is a health threat. So a little more on the radar. But one of the things that's interesting in the tracking over a longer period of time is that the one thing that Canadians and Americans are synchronized on is a focus on China and concern about China. So that's really one of the big takeaways from the longer term tracking and the most recent wave of research that we've done.
We saw U.S. President Joe Biden had a meeting with Chinese President Xi recently, just to sort of cool tensions, and it's really driving a lot of debate in Canada on how we should approach relations with China, especially after the two Michaels. What do you think will happen in the future in terms of trade with Canada and China and relations?
Well, I think what has to happen, I think what would be in the ideal situation is that there should be some sort of strategy or common sense of purpose in terms of relations with China. And I think for the Americans, what they would like to see, and when we, for example, take something basic like inspecting goods, we asked Americans and Canadians, their goods coming from a number of different major trading partners like, China, Japan, Germany, the United Kingdom and France. At the top of the list for inspections in both Canada and the United States is China. About 2 out of every 3 Canadians and about 55% of Americans think that China should be the top target for inspecting goods when it shows up at either the American or the Canadian border. But I think right now, at least, there has to be some sort of alignment, not perfect alignment, but some sort of understanding on how to respond to China. And you know what, Michael? The United States, Canada, Germany, the United Kingdom, everyone in the world is trying to sort out what the relationship is with China and how to manage that. And but I think for the Americans, they're probably, I would probably hazard to say they're probably a little impatient with Canada because they're assuming that Canada should have a similar type of policy. But you look at that 5G stuff, no decision on that.
Yeah.
And it rattles the Canadian cage when U.S. President Joe Biden says, "We don't have a better friend and ally than Australia." And then everybody in Canada's like, "What? Hey, come on. I thought we were your best friend." Well, maybe not. But I think that speaks to some of the underlying tension that we have between the Canadian government and the U.S. administration on some big issues, including China.
Nick, any final thoughts for this episode? Any big takeaway?
Well, I think the big takeaway is we continue to have uncertainty. There's political uncertainty because of, for example, problems within the Conservative Party and what that might mean. We've got the speech from the throne coming up. That will probably be the key indicator as to the political future, not just of the Liberals, but also of Justin Trudeau. Will it be a legacy speech from the throne, perhaps with some big new initiatives on the environment and Indigenous reconciliation? Or will it be workmanlike to try to rebuild a Liberal coalition so that they're ready for the next election? So that'll be the one thing that I'm looking for. But a lot of uncertainty, and it won't be settled, I don't think, in 2022.
Well, we'll definitely be watching the throne speech very carefully to see which way it goes. Nick, as always, thanks very much.
Okay, thank you.
And where can we find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Nick, N-I-K Nanos, or at www.nanos.co.
And I'm also on Twitter at Michael Stittle. And also for more on what Nick and I have discussed, please go to ctvnews.ca. Thanks for listening.